hands on his worn blue uniform pants as he walked the empty hallways of Pinecrest Middle School after hours. The squeak of his work boots against the freshly mopped floor echoed through the corridor. Most days, he found comfort in this solitude. Today, anxiety knotted his stomach. Thanksgiving. The holiday had lost its shine 6 years ago when Rosalind's car skidded off the mountain road in a November storm. Since then, it had been just him and Axel, making do with quiet gratitude for what remained. Until Vanessa. He checked his watch. 4:30. He needed to get home to help Axel prepare for tonight. Vanessa had been clear about her expectations her first chance to show her family that marrying a school janitor hadn't been the mistake they predicted. Mr. Greaves. Harlan turned to see Principal Townsend approaching from the administrative offices. Heading out early for the holiday? Harlan nodded. Vanessa's family is coming for dinner. Townsend's smile tightened slightly. Well, that should be interesting. The principal had met Vanessa at the staff Christmas party last year. The memory of her barely concealed disdain for the support staff still hung between them. Axel's excited. Harlan said simply, "How's he doing?" Still keeping that chess streak alive. A rare smile crossed Harlan's face. 3 tournaments straight. Kid's got a mind like a steel trap. Takes after his father. Observant. Harlan shook his head. Takes after his mother. The words came out softer than intended. An awkward silence followed, the kind that always emerged when Rosalind's ghost appeared in conversation. The drive home took 15 minutes, past neighborhoods that grew gradually more modest. Inside their small ranch-style house, Axel sat at the kitchen table, meticulously arranging colored pencils by shade. A stack of drawings lay beside him. At 11, he still had the slight build of a younger child, but his eyes carried a watchfulness that children shouldn't need. "Dad!" Axel jumped up. "Look, I made thank you cards for everyone." Harlan examined the carefully drawn cards. Each featured a different Thanksgiving scene: a turkey, a cornucopia, a family gathered around a table. "They're good, buddy. Real good." Axel beamed. "I made one for Aunt Tawny with books because Mom said she works at the library, and one for Grandma Lorelei with a crown because Mom says she's the queen of the family." Harlan felt his jaw tighten. "Where is your mom?" "Upstairs. She said her family expects things to be just so." Axel mimicked Vanessa's precise tone. From upstairs came the sound of the shower running. Harlan glanced at the kitchen. Vanessa had already started preparations, vegetables chopped in precise cubes, a turkey brining in a specialist container she'd ordered online, the good plates stacked ready for use. "Let me see what else you made," Harlan said, pulling up a chair beside his son. Axel eagerly showed him a drawing of a chessboard with pieces arranged in the Sicilian defense. Another showed the family: Harlan, tall and square-shouldered; Axel, small but smiling; and Vanessa, rendered with careful attention to her sleek dark hair and perfect posture. "These are special, Axel. Your mom's family will be impressed." The boy's face clouded slightly. Mom said not to bore everyone with chess talk. Harlan felt that familiar burn in his chest, the one that appeared whenever Vanessa subtly diminished his son's passions. He'd married her 14 months ago, convinced that Axel needed a mother's influence, that the gap left by Rosalind needed filling. Lately, he'd begun to question that decision. "Nothing boring about chess," Harlan said firmly. "It's strategy, planning, seeing 10 steps ahead. That's a skill most folks never learn." Vanessa entered the kitchen. Her hair was blow-dried to perfection, makeup applied with precision. She wore a burgundy dress that probably cost more than Harlan made in a week. "You're not changed," she said, eyes narrowing at his uniform. "Just got home. Plenty of time." She checked her watch. "They'll be here in an hour." Mother is always precisely on time. Her gaze shifted to the table. "Axel, clear your art supplies. The dining room needs to be perfect." "Yes, Mom." Axel began gathering his drawings. "And wear the outfit I laid out on your bed," she added. "Not the sweater your father bought you. It looks homemade." It was homemade, knitted by Rosalind during her pregnancy. Harlan felt his fingers curl in a fist but kept his face neutral. Vanessa had been increasingly critical of anything connected to Rosalind, as though trying to erase all traces of the woman who came before her. "I'll make sure he's ready," Harlan said evenly. Come on, buddy. As they walked upstairs, Harlan placed a hand on Axel's small shoulder. The boy had grown quiet, sensing the tension. Your drawings are great, Harlan said. I'm proud of you. Axel looked up with those solemn eyes that sometimes made him seem decades older. Dad, will they like me? The question hit Harlan hard. Anyone who doesn't like you isn't worth worrying about, he answered. Remember that. In their bedroom, Harlan found a pressed white shirt and navy slacks Vanessa had laid out. Next to them was a child-sized bow tie. He shook his head slightly, imagining how uncomfortable Axel would be. When they returned downstairs, Vanessa was arranging flowers in the center of the dining table. She glanced up, nodding approval at Axel's appearance, but frowning slightly at Harlan's. Your tie doesn't match the tablecloth, she said. It's the only one I have. She sighed. Well, it's too late now. Axel, come help me finish setting the table. The doorbell rang at exactly 6 o'clock. Vanessa straightened, taking a deep breath. Remember, she said to Harlan, my brother is very respected in the education community, and my mother is sensitive about certain topics. Like what? Just follow my lead. She smoothed her dress and went to answer the door. Harlan placed a hand on Axel's shoulder. Stay close to me tonight, okay? The boy nodded, clutching his thank you cards in slightly trembling hands. The voices in the entryway grew louder as Vanessa ushered in her family. Harlan stood with Axel in the dining room, watching as they filed in. Silas Dane entered first, tall, thinning hair carefully combed over a bald spot, wearing a sport coat with embroidered crest that screamed community college professor, trying to look Ivy League. Behind him came his wife, Tawny, sharp-featured with eagle eyes that immediately began cataloging every detail of the home. Last was Lorelei, Vanessa's mother, a small woman with rigid posture and a perpetual expression of having smelled something unpleasant. Mother, Silas, Tawny, this is my husband Harlan, and his son Axel, Vanessa said, voice pitched higher than normal. Silas stepped forward, extending a hand with obvious reluctance. So the maintenance man, Vanessa mentioned you're very handy. Harlan gripped the offered hand firmly, noting the wince that followed. Janitor, actually, someone's got to keep the schools running. Indeed, Silas replied, withdrawing his hand. I suppose every role has its purpose. Tawny moved to examine a framed photo on the wall. This house is quaint, very working-class authentic. Lorelei didn't bother with pleasantries. Vanessa, the table looks lovely. You always did have a knack for making the best of situations. Axel stepped forward, holding out his cards. I made these for everyone. The three visitors stared at the boy as though he were offering them used tissues. After an awkward pause, Tawny took the cards with pinched fingers. How creative, she said. Harlan felt his son deflate beside him. He placed a protective hand on the boy's shoulder. Axel's quite the artist. Takes after his mother. His mother? Lorelei asked sharply, glancing at Vanessa. His birth mother, Harlan clarified. She was an art teacher. An uncomfortable silence filled the room. Vanessa laughed nervously. Let's move to the dining room, shall we? Everything's ready. As they walked to the table, Harlan noticed that Silas and Tawny were exchanging looks and suppressed smiles. The hairs on the back of his neck stood up. Something was wrong. I've prepared all Mother's traditional recipes, Vanessa was saying. The cornbread stuffing, cranberry relish. You've gone to such trouble, Tawny interrupted. But will everyone appreciate it? Her eyes slid toward Axel. Vanessa's smile faltered for just a moment. Everyone find your seats. Axel, why don't you go to your place? Harlan watched as his son walked around the table, looking for his name card. The boy stopped, confusion crossing his face. Mom? I don't see my name. Vanessa's smile didn't reach her eyes. Check the kitchen, dear. Something cold settled in Harlan's stomach as Axel walked into the kitchen. A moment later, there was silence. Harlan moved quickly to the doorway. There, on the floor near the refrigerator, sat a dog bowl. Inside were brown, kibble-shaped cereal pieces. A paper label taped to the side read Axel in Vanessa's neat handwriting. The boy stood frozen, staring down at the bowl, his small frame rigid with shock. Behind Harlan, Silas let out a snort of laughter. Tawny's high-pitched giggle followed. Even Lorelei made a sound of amusement. Vanessa, Harlan said, his voice dangerously quiet. What is this? His wife had the decency to look slightly uncomfortable, but her voice carried a smirk when she answered. Just a little family tradition. The newest member eats in the kitchen for their first holiday. In a dog bowl. Harlan's voice was steel. Vanessa shrugged. It's just a joke. Besides, and here her voice took on a cruel edge, a kid raised in janitor town doesn't need turkey. The dining room erupted in awkward laughter. Harlan turned to see Axel's face crumple, tears welling in his eyes as he fought not to cry. Something snapped inside Harlan, not with fire or fury, but with cold, absolute clarity. Without a word, he crossed to his son, took his small hand in his own, and walked straight to the front door. Harlan, Vanessa called after them. Don't be so sensitive. It's just a joke. He didn't look back, didn't speak, just helped Axel into his coat, took his own from the hook, and walked out into the cold November night, closing the door firmly behind them. I in the car. Axel finally let the tears come. Dad, why would Mom do that? Harlan started the engine, his movements precise and controlled. She's not the person I thought she was. He pulled away from the curb. And she's never doing anything like that to you again. Scene 3. A fire inside the Red Pine Motel sat just off the highway, its neon sign buzzing in the gathering darkness. Harlan paid cash for a room with 2 double beds, ignoring the clerk's curious glance at their formal clothes and Axel's tear-stained face. Room 14 smelled of industrial cleaner and cigarettes, poorly masked by air freshener. The boy sat on the edge of the bed, silent, his bow tie hanging loose around his neck. Hungry? Harlan asked. Axel nodded slightly. Wait here. I'll grab something. At the vending machine, Harlan punched the buttons with more force than necessary. The image of that dog bowl kept flashing in his mind. Along with Vanessa's smirking face, her family's laughter, he returned with arms full of chips, candy bars, and sodas. Not a proper Thanksgiving dinner, but the best he could manage for now. Axel had changed into the pajamas from the small overnight bag they kept in the car for chess tournaments. The formal clothes lay neatly folded on the chair. Dinner is served, Harlan said, dumping the snacks onto the bed between them. Not exactly turkey, but it's better, Axel said softly. They ate in silence for a while, the TV murmuring in the background. Dad, Axel finally asked, was it because of me? Harlan set down his soda. What do you mean? Did Mom do that because I did something wrong? Because I'm not really her kid? The question cut through Harlan like a knife. He moved to sit beside his son, putting an arm around the thin shoulders. Listen to me. You did nothing wrong. But they did. And now they pay for it. Pay how? Harlan's jaw tightened. Things are going to change. Starting tonight. He got up, dug through his wallet, and pulled out a crumpled receipt. From his overnight bag, he took a spiral notebook he used for keeping track of school maintenance tasks. He sat at the small desk in the corner and began to write. Axel watched him curiously. What are you doing? Making a plan. The words flowed onto the page, not in anger, but with cold precision. First, immediate steps. Find a temporary place to stay, gather their important documents, secure what money they had. Then longer term. Divorce proceedings, custody arrangements, housing options, but Harlan kept writing beyond these practical matters. Ideas formed as his pen moved across the paper. Ideas about respect, about dignity, about building something that would ensure Axel never had to feel like an outsider again. Hours passed. Axel eventually fell asleep, curled on his side with his hand tucked under his cheek. Harlan continued writing, pausing occasionally to check on his son. Around midnight, his phone buzzed with Vanessa's name on the screen. He silenced it without answering. Let her worry. Let her wonder. The time for talking had passed the moment she decided to humiliate his child, but by morning, Harlan had filled 10 pages. It wasn't just a plan for leaving anymore, it was a blueprint for redefining everything. For building something new from the ashes of what had just burned down. Axel stirred as sunlight filtered through the thin curtains. Are we going home? He asked sleepily. Harlan closed the notebook. Not to that house. We're going to make a new home. The boy sat up, rubbing his eyes. What about Mom? She's not who we thought she was, Harlan said simply. And we deserve better. Axel nodded, accepting this with the resilience only children can muster. Where will we go? I need to make some calls. For now, we'll stay here. ACT 2. Cold Scene 1. Vanessa's panic 3 days after Thanksgiving, Harlan pulled into the driveway of the house he had shared with Vanessa. Her car was gone, as expected. She taught advanced placement math at Westridge High School, which didn't let out until 3:30. Wait here, he told Axel, who sat in the passenger seat clutching a list of items to collect. Can I help? The boy asked. Better if you stay put. This won't take long. Harlan used his key to enter through the back door. The house smelled of artificial pine. Cleaner Vanessa must have been stress cleaning again. In the kitchen, unwashed dishes sat in the sink, unusual for his fastidious wife. He worked quickly, gathering their essential documents: first birth certificates, Axel's school records, his own employment papers. In a bedroom, he took only clothes and a few personal items, including the small wooden box containing Rosalind's wedding ring and the photos Vanessa had removed from display. In Axel's room, he packed the boy's beloved books and chess set, his art supplies, and clothes. The room was otherwise sparse. Vanessa had redecorated shortly after moving in, replacing Axel's colorful space with something more mature and neutral. The last thing he did was place a note in the microwave, the first place Vanessa checked each night when preparing dinner. It read simply, "You fed my son dog food. I'll make sure you choke on your own pride." No goodbye. No explanation needed beyond that. Did you get everything? Axel asked as Harlan slid back into the driver's seat. Everything that matters. The apartment above the hardware store consisted of 2 small bedrooms, a bathroom with temperamental plumbing, and a combined kitchen living area with a view of the parking lot. Bill, the owner, had agreed to rent it to them on a month-to-month basis, no questions asked. Around 5:30, his phone rang. Vanessa again. This time, he answered. Where are you? Her voice was high, panicked. What did you do with my things? We took only what was ours, Harlan replied evenly. You can't just leave. You can't take Axel. I'm his mother now. You forfeited that right when you put dog food in a bowl with his name on it. She made a frustrated sound. It was a joke. My family always does that kind of thing. It builds character. It builds resentment, Harlan corrected. And shame. I won't let Axel grow up thinking he's worth less than anyone. This is ridiculous. You're overreacting. Come home, and we'll talk about this like adults. There's nothing to talk about. I've contacted a lawyer. You'll be hearing from them. Vanessa's voice rose an octave. A lawyer? You can't afford a lawyer on your salary. You'd be surprised what I can't afford when it matters. Is this about me, making fun of your job? I was just trying to fit in with my family. You know how Silas and Mother can be. I know exactly what they are. What you are too, apparently. The line went quiet for a moment. When Vanessa spoke again, her voice had shifted to something more calculating. You can't support him properly. I have a career, benefits. The courts will see that. The courts will see a woman who feeds a child dog food as a joke, Harlan replied. Goodbye, Vanessa. He hung up and turned to find Axel standing in the doorway, a box of his books in his arms. Is Mom mad? The boy asked. She's upset, but that's a problem now. Axel set down the box. She called me sensitive whenever I'd get quiet around her family. He looked up at his father. But I just didn't like how they talked about you. Like you were less. Harlan knelt to eye level with his son. Listen to me. There's nothing wrong with being sensitive. It means you notice things. And there's nothing wrong with being a janitor. Honest work is never something to be ashamed of. I know. Axel's expression was solemn. That's what Mom, my real mom, used to say. The Bluebird Diner sat at the edge of town, its chrome exterior reflecting the midday sun. Harlan arrived early, securing a booth in the back corner with a view of the door. He ordered coffee and waited, reviewing his notes one more time. At tea precisely noon, a stocky woman with salt and pepper haircut and a practical bob pushed through the door. Yvette Grimsley scanned the diner, spotted Harlan, and headed directly toward him. Greaves, she said, sliding into the booth opposite him. You look like hell. Good to see you too, Grimsley. So, she said after taking a long sip of coffee, you wanted to talk. Must be important for you to track me down through the union directory. Harlan closed his notebook. You were the union steward at Central for what? 15 years. 17. Before budget cuts, forced consolidation. Now I run the cafeteria at your school and try to keep the district from replacing real food with processed garbage. She studied him over the rim of her mug. But you didn't ask me here to talk about chicken nuggets. No, I need your help. Yvette's eyebrow rose. What kind of help? Harlan explained his situation, the marriage to Vanessa, the Thanksgiving incident, the separation. He kept his voice even, clinical, but couldn't entirely mask the cold anger underneath. Yvette listened without interruption. When he finished, she set down her coffee with controlled precision. That woman put your boy's name on a dog bowl. Harlan nodded. And you want what from me exactly? Because if it's an alibi for justifiable homicide, I should warn you I'm a terrible liar. Despite everything, Harlan found himself smiling slightly. Nothing that drastic. I want to build something decent. For people like us. Define people like us. The invisible ones. The ones who keep things running but don't get invited to the table. The cafeteria workers, the custodians, the bus drivers. Harlan leaned forward. The kids who come from families where college isn't guaranteed, where an AP class feels out of reach. Interest sparked in Yvette's eyes. You've got my attention. Harlan outlined his idea of a program to provide school supplies, tutoring, and mentorship to kids from working-class backgrounds. Something that would give them the support and respect often missing from the system. Ambitious, Yvette commented when he finished. And expensive. Where's the money coming from? That's where I need your help. You know everyone in the district. You helped organize that fundraiser last year for the teacher with cancer. Yvette nodded slowly. I might know some people, but Harlan, this isn't just about collecting school supplies. You're talking about creating a whole support network. I know. And let me guess, this isn't just about helping disadvantaged kids. This is about showing your ex-wife and her stuck-up family that you're not just some janitor they can look down on. Harlan met her gaze directly. Does that bother you? Yvette laughed, a short, sharp sound. Hell no. Revenge as a motivation for social good? I can work with that. She pulled a small notebook from her purse and began writing. First, we need space. I know the community center has rooms they don't use after 5. My cousin's on the board. For the next hour, they planned, Yvette's practical experience in organizing perfectly complementing Harlan's determination. By the time they ordered lunch, they had the outline of a program starting small with a school supplies drive, then expanding to tutoring sessions, eventually developing into a comprehensive support system. We should start with the middle school, Yvette said. Get established there, then expand to the high school. That's where the real barriers kick in anyway, when kids start getting tracked for college or not. Axel's school, Harlan noted. Yes, and where your wife's brother is assistant principal, if I remember correctly. Harlan nodded. Silas Dane. He was there that night, laughing. Then he'd better get used to seeing you around, Yvette said with a grim smile. In a whole new capacity. As they were finishing lunch, Yvette asked, what are you calling this thing? Harlan hadn't thought that far ahead. Does it need a name? Everything needs a name, Greaves. Something people can rally behind. She considered for a moment. How about a seat at the table? The echo of what had been denied his son wasn't lost on Harlan. Perfect. 2 weeks later, a seat at the table held its first school supplies drive. Harlan had spent every evening making calls, sending emails, and visiting local businesses for donations. Yvette had mobilized her extensive network of contacts throughout the district. The turnout exceeded their expectations. Teachers from 3 schools, parents, even some students showed up to volunteer. Principal Townsend made an appearance, bringing a box of graphing calculators donated by the math department. Axel helped too, setting up a chess table where he offered to teach interested kids. By the end of the day, he had a small group of dedicated students sitting cross-legged on the floor, carefully considering their next moves. Your son's got a gift for teaching, Yvette commented, watching the impromptu chess lesson. He gets that from his mother, Harlan replied. Rosalind could make anyone understand anything. The article appeared the following week, small but prominent on the local section's front page. School custodian launches program to level educational playing field. The piece was well written, portraying Harlan as a dedicated father and community member stepping up to fill a need in the district. 3 days after the article was published, Harlan received a call from the district superintendent's office requesting a meeting. Expecting trouble, he was surprised when his superintendent, Dr. Reynolds, offered him use of an unused classroom at Pinecrest for after-school tutoring sessions. "What you're doing aligns with our equity initiatives," Dr. Reynolds explained. "And frankly, it's good PR for the district." Harlan accepted the offer, recognizing it for the opportunity it was. With official space and tacit approval from administration, a seat at the table gained legitimacy that would make it harder for anyone to shut down, including Silas Dane. The program grew quickly. Teachers volunteered their time for tutoring. Local businesses donated supplies. Parents spread the word. Within a month, they had 30 regular students attending sessions 3 times a week. Axel thrived in this environment. He helped younger kids with reading and math, gaining confidence with each session. His chess club expanded to 8 regular members, including 2 girls who'd never played before but proved to be natural strategists. One evening, as Harlan was locking up after a session, he found Principal Townsend waiting in the hallway. "Impressive work, Greaves," Townsend said. "You've created something important here. Just filling a need. It's more than that. You've given these kids something many of them never had: someone who believes they belong at the table." Townsend paused. "I heard about what happened with Vanessa. For what it's worth, I'm sorry." Harlan nodded, accepting the sentiment. "The program is what matters now." "Yes, well, about that." The superintendent is pleased, but not everyone shares that sentiment. Silas Dane, Harlan guessed. He's been asking questions about funding, space usage, liability. Townsend sighed. "Nothing that can't be addressed, but just be aware. He seems unusually invested in finding problems." "I'm sure he is." Harlan locked the classroom door. "Let him look. We're doing everything by the book." As Harlan walked away, Townsend called after him, "There's an opening coming up for community outreach coordinator. District position, decent pay increase. You should apply." Harlan turned, surprised. "I'm a janitor." "You're a lot more than that, Greaves." And it's time everyone recognized it. The school counselor's office was painted a deliberately calming shade of blue. Leif Armand sat behind his desk, his expression grave as he faced Harlan. "Thank you for coming in, Mr. Greaves," he said. "I wanted to discuss something concerning Axel." Harlan felt his muscles tense. "Is he in trouble?" "Not at all. However, during yesterday's physical education class, I noticed some bruising on his arms when he changed for gym." Cold dread washed over Harlan. "Bruising?" Armand nodded. When I asked him about it, he was reluctant to explain. Eventually, he mentioned an altercation with another student, Colin Dane. "Dane?" Harlan repeated. "Silas Dane's son?" "Yes." According to Axel, there have been several incidents over the past few weeks. Name-calling, shoving, and yesterday, apparently, an organized game of keep away with Axel's chess notebook that ended with him being pushed into the bike racks. Harlan's hands gripped the arms of his chair. "Why didn't he tell me?" Armand's expression softened. "He didn't want to worry you. He said you had important things to focus on with the program." The counselor leaned forward. "Mr. Greaves, I've been supervising the chess club since Axel started it. He's an extraordinary young man, insightful, patient, remarkably mature for his age. But I'm concerned about this situation with Colin." "You think it's deliberate," Harlan stated, "because of what's happened between me and the Danes." "I can't speculate on motivations," Armand replied diplomatically. "But the timing is notable. Colin never bothered Axel before, despite being in several classes together since elementary school." Harlan nodded slowly. "I appreciate you telling me. There's something else." Armand handed Harlan a flyer. "The state chess championship is next month. Axel is easily good enough to compete, but he hasn't submitted his application." When I asked why, he said he didn't want to cause problems. "Problems?" "The championship requires a school sponsor. Normally, that would be me, but I'll be on paternity leave during the tournament. The alternate sponsor would be the assistant principal, Silas Dane," Harlan concluded. "Exactly. I think Axel is worried about creating a conflict for you." Armand sighed. "It's a shame. He has real talent." Harlan stared at the flyer, something hardening inside him. "He'll participate. I'll make sure of it." That evening, Harlan sat with Axel at their small kitchen table. The boy's bruises were visible now that Harlan knew to look for them, faint purple marks on his forearms, a darker one near his elbow. Why didn't you tell me about Colin? Harlan asked directly. Axel looked down at his homework. It's not a big deal. Bruises are a big deal, buddy. It would just make things worse if you got involved. The boy's voice was quiet but firm. Colin said his dad talks about you all the time. About how you're trying to act like you're better than your job. Harlan felt a spike of anger, but kept his voice calm. What Colin's father thinks doesn't matter. What matters is that no one has the right to hurt you. I know. Axel finally looked up. But I don't want to make your program harder. Mr. Armand says it's really important for kids who need help. The selflessness of his son's concern hit Harlan like a physical blow. This child, this remarkable, thoughtful boy, was willing to endure bullying to protect his father's work. Listen to me, Harlan said firmly. Nothing is more important than your safety. Not the program, not my job, nothing. Understand? Axel nodded slowly. Now, Mr. Armand gave me this. Harlan placed the chess championship flyer on the table. He says you're good enough to compete, but haven't signed up. Why not? Mr. Dane would have to approve it, Axel replied. He's in charge when Mr. Armand is gone. And you were worried that would cause problems. It wasn't a question. Axel nodded again. Here's what we're going to do, Harlan said decisively. You're going to enter that tournament, and I'm going to make sure Mr. Dane signs off on it. The next day, Harlan requested a meeting with Silas Dane. The assistant principal kept him waiting for 30 minutes before calling him into his office. Greaves, Silas said without looking up from his computer. What can I do for you? Problem with a toilet in the West Wing. I'm here about my son, Harlan replied evenly. And yours. That got Silas's attention. He looked up, eyes narrowing. Excuse me. Your son Colin has been bullying Axel. It stops today. Silas leaned back in his chair. Children have disagreements all the time. Perhaps if Axel were more socially adept. Axel has bruises, Harlan interrupted, documented by the school counselor with photos. I have copies. The assistant principal's expression flickered. I'm sure it was just rough housing. Colin told Axel that you talk about me at home, about how I'm trying to act better than my job. Harlan leaned forward slightly. Seems like an odd thing for a child to say without prompting. Silas's face hardened. What exactly are you implying? I'm not implying anything. I'm stating facts. Your son is bullying mine, apparently with your tacit approval. Harlan placed the chess championship flyer on the desk. Axel needs your signature to participate in this tournament, as acting sponsor while Mr. Armand is on leave. And why would I do that? Silas asked coldly. Because if you don't, the next meeting I have will be with the superintendent, the school board, and possibly a lawyer, discussing why the assistant principal is blocking a qualified student from an educational opportunity while his own son physically harasses that same student. The color drained from Silas's face. Are you threatening me? I'm describing a potential sequence of events. Harlan pushed the flyer closer. Your choice which path we take. For a long moment, they stared at each other, neither willing to back down. Finally, Silas picked up a pen and signed the form with a sharp, angry motion. This doesn't change anything, he said, sliding the paper back across the desk. You're wrong, Harlan replied, taking the signed form. This changes everything. As he turned to leave, Silas called after him. You know, for someone who claims to be all about fairness, you're awfully quick to use your son as a weapon. Harlan paused at the door. I'm not using my son as a weapon. I'm protecting him and every other kid who deserves better than what people like you think they're worth. That night, Harlan sat at his desk after Axel had gone to bed. The signed tournament form lay before him, a small victory in what was becoming a larger campaign. But Silas's parting shot had hit home. Was he using his son in his quest for justice? He opened his laptop and began a search. Within an hour, he had located and downloaded dozens of public records, school board meeting minutes, budget allocations, facilities reports. He created a spreadsheet, meticulously documenting discrepancies he found in funding for programs Silas oversaw. This wasn't just about Axel anymore, or even about the dog bowl incident. This was about a system that allowed people like Silas and Vanessa to determine who deserved respect and opportunity based on arbitrary measures of status. W.Y. morning, Harlan had compiled enough evidence to raise serious questions about Silas's management of after-school program funds. Nothing definitive, but enough to warrant further investigation if presented to the right people in the right way. The community center buzzed with activity. 6 months after its inception, a seat at the table had expanded to 3 locations across the district, serving over 100 students weekly. Today was their showcase event, an open house for parents, educators, and community members to see the program in action. Harlan moved through the crowded room, answering questions, directing visitors, ensuring everything ran smoothly. He wore a button-down shirt and tie instead of his usual work uniform, a conscious choice to present himself as the program director rather than the janitor. "Mr. Greaves," a local reporter approached, notepad in hand. "Mind if I ask you a few questions for our feature?" This was the 3rd media request in as many weeks. The program's success had begun to attract attention beyond the district, particularly after several students showed marked improvement in their standardized test scores. "Your program has grown impressively in just 6 months," the reporter began. "What do you attribute that success to?" "Community need," Harlan answered simply. "We're filling a gap that's existed for years. These kids aren't lacking ability, they're lacking resources and advocates. And you developed this concept while working as a school custodian?" "I still am the custodian at Pinecrest," Harlan corrected. "This program runs during my off hours." The reporter looked surprised. "That's quite a commitment. What motivated you to take this on?" Harlan was saved from answering by Yvette's arrival. "Sorry to interrupt," she said briskly, "but the school board members just arrived. They're asking for you specifically." Across the room, Harlan spotted a familiar figure. Silas Dane had entered the community center and was speaking with a reporter who had interviewed Harlan earlier. Even from a distance, Harlan could read the tension in Silas's posture, the forced smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Excuse me for one moment," Harlan said to the board members. "Yvette can show you our technology center. I'll join you shortly." He made his way across the room, arriving just as Silas finished speaking with the reporter. "Dane," Harlan greeted him neutrally. "Didn't expect to see you here." Silas's smile was razor-thin. "Just checking on the program that's been draining resources from official district initiatives." "Nothing's being drained. We operate on donations and volunteer hours. For now." Silas glanced toward the board members. "I see you're working your way up the ladder. Quite the ambitious janitor." "I prefer custodial engineer," Harlan replied evenly. "And yes, I am ambitious for the kids who deserve better than being relegated to the kitchen floor." Silas's face darkened at the reference. "You know, several of the after-school program grants I oversee have been suspended pending administrative review. Funny how that happened, right after you started poking around in public records. Public information is just that, public. If reviewing that information led to questions about fund allocation, that's hardly my fault." "Don't play innocent," Silas hissed, dropping the pretense of civility. "You've been systematically undermining me for months. Anonymous complaints to the board, questions raised at PDA meetings about my programs. You think I don't know it's you?" Harlan maintained his calm demeanor. "If your programs can't withstand basic oversight, perhaps the problem isn't with the questions being asked." Silas stepped closer, lowering his voice. "This little power trip won't last. People like you don't belong in administration. You belong behind a mop." "Are you done?" Harlan asked quietly. "Because your nephew is watching." Silas turned to see Axel standing nearby, his expression a mixture of concern and defiance. "Ah, the chess prodigy," Silas said with exaggerated sweetness. "Enjoying your moment of fame? Don't get too comfortable. These things are fleeting for certain types of families." "Dad," Axel called, ignoring Silas. "Ms. Grimsley needs you in the computer lab. They want to see my app." As they walked away, Axel whispered, "Ms. Grimsley doesn't really need you. I just wanted to get you away from him." Harlan smiled, resting a hand on his son's shoulder. "Smart move. You're getting good at strategy off the chessboard, too." The remainder of the showcase proceeded without incident. The board members were impressed with the program, particularly Axel's homework tracking application, which had been downloaded by over 50 students since its launch. As the event wound down, Dr. Patel approached Harlan again. "I hope you'll seriously consider the position, Mr. Greaves. The formal posting will go up next week, but I wanted to speak with you personally first." I appreciate that. I'll definitely apply. After the last visitors had left, Harlan and Yvette sat amidst the remnants of the showcase, too tired to begin cleaning up. District Director, Yvette mused. Not bad for a revenge plot that started 6 months ago. Harlan shook his head. It's not about revenge anymore. Not entirely, anyway. Oh, it's about changing the system. He looked around at the evidence of what they'd built student work displayed on walls. Learning stations carefully designed for different needs. A community formed around the simple idea that everyone deserved respect and opportunity. Making sure what happened to Axel doesn't happen to other kids. The hotel conference room was filled to capacity for the Eastern Regional Educators Summit. Educators from 6 counties had gathered for the 3-day event. Vanessa Greaves stood at the podium, her usually perfect appearance showing subtle signs of strain. Which is why compassion must be at the center of our educational approach, she was saying, her voice carrying a forced enthusiasm, particularly for students from challenging backgrounds. In the back of the room, a teacher from Westridge High, Vanessa's own school, whispered to her companion, "Is she seriously giving a talk on compassion? After what she did to her stepson?" The whisper wasn't as quiet as intended. Several nearby attendees turned, interest piqued. "What did she do?" someone asked. The Westridge teacher hesitated, suddenly aware of the attention. "You haven't heard? It was all over the district listserv. The Thanksgiving incident." More heads turned. The whispers grew, spreading through the room like ripples in a pond. On stage, Vanessa faltered, sensing the shift in atmosphere. "As educators, we must recognize the unique challenges faced by." She paused, distracted by the rising murmur. "Excuse me, if I could have your attention." From the middle of the room, a woman stood. "Ms. Greaves, how do you reconcile this talk on compassion with feeding your stepson dog food at Thanksgiving dinner?" The room went silent. Vanessa's face drained of color. That's a personal matter that's been grossly mischaracterized. My daughter is in your stepson's chess club," another audience member called out. "She told me what happened. The whole school knows." Vanessa's professional mask cracked further. "This isn't the appropriate forum. Isn't it, though?" The first woman remained standing. "You're lecturing us about compassion in education while treating a child in your care with cruelty. It's hypocritical." People began gathering their materials, standing, moving toward the exits. Not everyone, some remained seated, uncomfortable but unwilling to participate in the exodus, but enough to make the statement clear. Vanessa watched, stunned, as nearly half her audience walked out. The conference organizer approached the podium, whispering urgently in her ear. She nodded mechanically and stepped away from the microphone. The drive home from the conference was a blur of humiliation and rage. Who had spread the story? How had it traveled so quickly through educational circles? As Vanessa pulled into her driveway, she noticed something white fluttering under her windshield wiper. She assumed it was an advertisement until she pulled it free and unfolded the paper, in block letters, "Child abuser." Everyone knows. Her hand shook as she crushed the paper, looking around wildly to see if anyone was watching. The street was quiet, peaceful in the early evening light. No sign of who might have left the message. Inside, she went straight to her laptop, opening social media with dread. Nothing obvious on her main feed, but when she searched her name, her breath caught. A post in a private local educators group had hundreds of comments. Did anyone else attend Vanessa Greaves' workshop on compassion? The irony is unbelievable given what she did to her stepson. The comments were merciless. "My cousin works at Pinecrest. Said she put actual dog food in a bowl with the kid's name on it. Made him eat in the kitchen while everyone else had turkey. Her ex is running that amazing after-school program now. Talk about different approaches to education. Her brother's under investigation for misusing program funds too. Whole family seems toxic." Vanessa slammed the laptop closed, heart pounding. This wasn't just professional embarrassment. This was her reputation being systematically destroyed. And the mention of Silas being investigated. Was that connected too? She called her brother, pacing as the phone rang repeatedly. When he finally answered, his voice was terse. "Not a good time, Vanessa. Did you know people were talking about the Thanksgiving incident? About both of us?" It's all over social media. Silas was quiet for a moment. Yes, I'm dealing with my own PR nightmare. Someone filed a formal complaint about my after-school funding allocations. There's an audit scheduled. It's Harlan, Vanessa said fiercely. He's behind all of this. Possibly, but he's been careful. The complaint about my funding came through proper channels, with documentation. Nothing that can be dismissed as a personal vendetta. What are we going to do? I'm handling my situation, Silas replied coolly. You should focus on yours. What does that mean? It means I warned you about marrying the janitor. Now you're experiencing the consequences. The line went dead as Silas hung up. Vanessa stared at the phone, a cold realization settling over her. She was alone in this. Her family, so supportive when she'd been the successful teacher marrying down, now viewed her as a liability. She opened a bottle of wine, not bothering with a glass, and returned to her laptop. This time, she searched Harlan's name. The results stung worse than the whispers and walkout at the conference. Article after article about a seat at the table. Photos of Harlan speaking to community groups, organizing events, standing alongside school board members. A video interview where he spoke articulately about educational equity and opportunity. And everywhere, comments praising his dedication, his vision, his commitment to helping underprivileged students. The final blow was a recent piece. District creates new equity director position. Grassroots program founder expected to apply. The article featured a photo of Harlan with Axel at a chess tournament, both smiling, a trophy between them. The transformation was stunning. The quiet, unassuming janitor, she'd married the man she believed would be grateful for her attention, who she could mold and manage, had emerged as a respected community leader. Meanwhile, her own carefully constructed professional identity was crumbling. The custody hearing was scheduled for next week. Initially, she'd been confident that her position as a certified teacher would outweigh Harlan's status as just a janitor in the judge's eyes. Now, she wasn't so sure. Scene 6. Custody showdown. The family court waiting area was a study in controlled anxiety. Parents, children, and attorneys moved through the space with tense purpose, voices hushed, expressions guarded. Harlan sat on a bench against the wall, Axel beside him, both dressed in their best clothes, the same suits they'd worn to the chess tournament. Across the room, Vanessa conferred with her attorney, a sharp-featured man in an expensive suit who kept glancing at Harlan with poorly concealed disdain. Vanessa herself looked immaculate as always, but with a brittle quality to her perfection, like porcelain on the verge of cracking. "You okay, buddy?" Harlan asked softly. Axel nodded, though his fingers worried at the hem of his jacket. "What's going to happen?" "The judge will ask some questions, review the evidence, and make a decision about where you'll live officially." Harlan kept his voice steady, matter of fact. "No matter what happens, nothing changes between us. You understand that, right?" "Yes." Axel's eyes drifted toward Vanessa. "Will I have to talk to her?" "Maybe, if the judge asks you to." Harlan placed a hand on his son's shoulder. "Just tell the truth. That's all anyone can ask of you." Their attorney, Sandra Powell, approached with a folder tucked under her arm. She was a no-nonsense woman in her 50s who specialized in family law and had agreed to take their case at a reduced rate after hearing the full story. "They're running about 20 minutes behind," she reported. "Judge Hawkins is thorough, which works in our favor. He'll take the time to review all our evidence." Harlan nodded. "Have you seen her filing? What's her strategy?" "Standard approach for a professional parent versus a blue-collar one. She's emphasizing her credentials as an educator, her financial stability, her ability to provide educational advantages." Powell's mouth thinned. No direct mention of the Thanksgiving incident, of course. But she doesn't deny it. Not explicitly. She characterizes it as a misunderstood family tradition that you've weaponized against her. Powell glanced at Axel, then lowered her voice. "She's also making some implications about your recent community involvement, suggesting it's more about building a case against her than genuine interest in education." Harlan felt Axel tense beside him. "It's okay," he assured the boy. "We have the truth on our side. And video evidence," Powell added, "which is why I'm confident. Speaking of which, is the young lady coming?" She should be here soon. Her mother was bringing her directly from school. As if summoned by the words, a teenage girl entered the waiting area with a woman who was clearly her mother, both with the same auburn hair and cautious expressions. Harlan recognized her from Thanksgiving Tawny's daughter, Maddie. Mr. Greaves? The girl approached hesitantly. I brought the video like you asked. Thank you, Maddie. Harlan introduced her to Powell, who led her to a quiet corner to review the footage once more before the hearing. Across the room, Vanessa had noticed the new arrivals. Her face paled as she urgently whispered to her attorney, who looked increasingly concerned. Dad, Axel said quietly, why does Mom look scared? Harlan considered his answer carefully. She's just now realizing that actions have consequences. The bailiff appeared at the courtroom door, calling their case number. As they rose to enter, Yvette arrived, slightly breathless from rushing. Sorry, school lunch crisis, she explained, straightening her blazer. Did I miss anything? Just starting, Harlan replied. Thanks for coming. Wouldn't miss it. Someone's got to be here to celebrate with you after. The courtroom was smaller than Harlan had imagined, the judge's bench less imposing. Judge Hawkins was a balding man with reading glasses perched on his nose, reviewing a file as they all took their places, Harlan and his team on one side, Vanessa and her attorney on the other. The proceedings began with formalities, case number, parties present, purpose of the hearing. Then each attorney made opening statements. Vanessa's counsel spoke first, painting a picture of a dedicated educator who had married a man with a young son, only to have the relationship deteriorate when her attempts to instill structure and academic rigor in the child's life were resisted. Powell's statement was concise and devastating. Your Honor, this case centers on one central question. Is a woman who feeds her stepson dog food as a joke fit to share custody of that child? We contend she is not, and we have brought evidence demonstrating not only this specific incident of cruelty, but a pattern of behavior that has caused my client's son significant emotional distress. Judge Hawkins's expression remained neutral, but his eyes sharpened. That's a serious allegation, counselor. I presume you have documentation? We do, Your Honor. First, we have video evidence of the Thanksgiving incident itself, recorded by a minor who was present. We also have written testimony from the child's school counselor documenting subsequent emotional impacts, and statements from several educators who have worked with both the child and Ms. Greaves. Vanessa's attorney rose quickly. Your Honor, any video would have been taken without my client's knowledge or consent. It was taken by a 13-year-old girl during a family dinner, Mr. Rutledge. Powell interjected. Not as part of an elaborate sting operation. Unless your client posts no recording signs at her dining room, I believe the evidence is admissible. Judge Hawkins nodded. I'll review the video. Let's proceed with witness testimony first. Leif Armand took the stand, describing his observations of Axel in the months before and after the Thanksgiving incident. He's an exceptionally bright, thoughtful child who suddenly became withdrawn, anxious about making mistakes. When I asked what was wrong, he eventually told me about being served dog food at the family Thanksgiving while everyone else ate turkey. And your professional assessment of the impact. Powell asked, significant psychological distress. Armand replied without hesitation, made worse by the fact that his stepmother, whom he was trying to build a relationship with, was the one who orchestrated the humiliation. When Vanessa took the stand, her composure showed cracks. She admitted the dog bowl incident, but insisted it was a family tradition meant to teach humility, and that Harlan had overreacted dramatically. So you believe serving a child dog food while everyone else eats a traditional meal is appropriate? Powell asked during cross-examination. It wasn't actual dog food, Vanessa protested. It was cereal shaped like kibble. A joke. A joke the 11-year-old child didn't find funny. A joke that left him in tears. He's always been oversensitive. I was trying to toughen him up. Powell's expression hardened. Ms. Greaves, can you explain why, in your text messages to my client after he left with his son, you referred to Axel as that janitor's kid and suggested he belonged on the floor anyway? Vanessa's face flushed. I was upset. He had just walked out of a dinner I'd spent days preparing. Because you serve his son dog food in a pet bowl, Powell reminded her. Your Honor, I'd like to play the video evidence now. The footage, recorded on Maddie's phone apparently without the adults noticing, was brief but damning. It captured the moment Axel discovered the dog bowl, his confusion turning to hurt, and Vanessa's cruel comment about Janitor Town. Most devastating was the laughter from the adults as the boy fought back tears. When the video ended, the courtroom was silent. Judge Hawkins removed his glasses, rubbing the bridge of his nose. "I've seen enough," he said finally. "Mr. Greaves, would you take the stand, please?" Harlan moved to the witness box, acutely aware of Axel watching him, of Vanessa's glare burning into his back. "Mr. Greaves," the judge began, "you're seeking sole custody with Ms. Greaves granted only supervised visitation. That's a significant restriction. Why do you believe it's necessary?" Harlan met the judge's gaze directly. "Because my son deserves to feel safe, respected, and valued in his own home. Vanessa has demonstrated repeatedly that she views him as less worthy than others based on his background, my background. I can't allow him to be raised in an environment where he's taught to be ashamed of who he is or where he comes from. And a supervised visitation requirement. I don't trust her judgment when it comes to Axel. I don't trust that she won't continue to try to diminish him or expose him to people who will. She doesn't need to raise him like a dog if she can't even treat him like a boy." The judge nodded thoughtfully. "I'd like to speak with the child privately. Attorneys may be present, but not the parents." In the hallway, waiting while Axel spoke with the judge, Harlan stood by the window, staring out at the parking lot below. Vanessa approached, her heels announcing her presence before she spoke. "You orchestrated this whole thing," she said, voice low with fury. "The program, the media attention, turning my colleagues against me. It was all to build up to this moment, wasn't it?" Harlan turned to face her. "I didn't orchestrate anything except creating something positive out of the mess you made. You did this to yourself, Vanessa. All I did was refuse to let your cruelty go unanswered. He's a child. Children need discipline, structure. Your coddling will make him weak. There's a difference between discipline and humiliation, between structure and control. But you never understood that." Her eyes narrowed. "You'll regret this. You think you've won with your little community program and your chess-playing brat. But people like you don't win in the end. You clean up after people like me." "Not anymore," Harlan replied simply. "That world is changing, and I'm helping change it." Judge Hawkins delivered his ruling without preamble. "Having reviewed the evidence and spoken with a minor child, I find clear and compelling reasons to grant the petitioner's request for sole legal and physical custody. Ms. Greaves will be granted supervised visitation twice monthly, to be conducted at the Family Services Center with a court-appointed supervisor present." Vanessa gasped, but the judge continued. "This arrangement will be reviewed in 6 months, at which time Ms. Greaves may petition for adjustment if she can demonstrate improved understanding of appropriate parental behavior, preferably through completion of court-approved parenting classes." In the courthouse parking lot, Harlan knelt to eye level with his son. "You okay?" Axel nodded. The judge was nice. He said I was very articulate. "That you are." Harlan smiled. "How about ice cream to celebrate? Can Ms. Grimsley and Mr. Armand come too?" Axel asked, looking at the 2 adults who had supported them through everything. "Of course they can," Harlan replied, standing. "They're family now." As they walked to the car, Harlan felt a weight lift from his shoulders. This victory, securing Axel's safety and well-being, was the foundation upon which everything else could be built. Silas Dane's office at Westmont Middle School projected careful authority, certificates displayed in matching frames, reference books arranged by height on polished shelves, a desk positioned to maximize psychological advantage over anyone seated across from it. Today, however, the space felt more like a bunker under siege. Silas glared at the email on his screen, reading it for the 3rd time as if repetition might change its content. To administrative staff, Westmont Middle School from Dr. Eleanor Reynolds, Superintendent Subject. Emergency Board Meeting Program Fund Audit. This is to notify all relevant parties that the school board has called an emergency session this Thursday at 7 p.m. to address irregularities identified in the recent audit of after-school program funding. Assistant Principal Silas Dane is required to attend with all documentation related to the Arts Enhancement Initiative STEM Explorers Program and Athletics Expansion Project for fiscal years 2022 to 2024. The message continued with bureaucratic precision, but its meaning was clear. The audit had found problems, and Silas was the target. With a sense of dread, he pulled up the local news website. The headline hit him like a physical blow. Investigation. Middle school assistant principal accused of embezzling PTA funds. The article was damning detailed, sourced, and accompanied by images of invoices that had supposedly paid for classroom renovations but actually covered personal expenses. Invoices only Silas should have had access to. His desk phone rang. The superintendent again. Silas, have you seen the article? Dr. Reynolds asked without preamble. Yes, just now. It's completely unfounded. A teacher has come forward confirming the fake invoices, Silas. And we have a parent ready to testify that you solicited a kickback from a vendor contracted for the science lab updates. Her voice was ice. The board is convening an emergency session this afternoon. You're suspended effective immediately, pending investigation. This is outrageous. I've given 12 years to this district. Save it for the board, Silas. Security will escort you to clean out your office in 30 minutes. The line went dead. Silas sat frozen, his carefully constructed world collapsing around him. His phone buzzed again. Vanessa, still demanding contact. He ignored it, focusing instead on the more pressing question. How had this happened? Who had access to those invoices, that information? The answer formed in his mind with crystal clarity. Harlan Greaves. The janitor who wasn't just a janitor anymore. The man who had methodically dismantled his sister's marriage and was now completing his revenge by destroying Silas's career. But how? How had a school custodian orchestrated such a comprehensive takedown? The answer came in a flash of memory. Harlan at the district records office months ago, requesting public documents under the Freedom of Information Act. Silas had dismissed it then as harmless busywork, never imagining the man would understand what he was looking at, much less know how to use it. As he packed his belongings, a commotion arose in the hallway. Curious, he opened his door to see a cluster of parents gathered outside the main office. Signs in their hands declared, "No corruption in our schools," and "Return our PTA money." Among them, he spotted Harlan Greaves, not participating in the protest, but standing slightly apart, observing. Their eyes met across the distance, and Silas expected to see triumph or gloating. Instead, Harlan's expression held something worse. Calm satisfaction, the look of a man who knew justice was being served. The school board meeting that evening was a formality. Evidence of Silas's financial improprieties was presented clear, documented, irrefutable. His attempts to explain were met with skepticism at best, open hostility at worst. The decision was unanimous. Termination for cause, with the district reserving the right to pursue legal action for recovery of misappropriated funds. As he left the board meeting, a reporter approached with microphone extended. Mr. Dane, how do you respond to allegations that you systematically diverted funds meant for student programs to personal use? Silas pushed past without answering, but froze when he heard the reporter's next question, directed at someone else. Mr. Greaves, as the newly appointed Director of Equity Initiatives, what's your response to tonight's decision? Harlan's voice was measured, without a trace of gloating. The district made the only appropriate choice, given the evidence. What matters now is rebuilding trust with parents and ensuring that resources meant for students actually reach them. Silas turned, unable to stop himself from confronting the architect of his downfall. Proud of yourself, Greaves? Destroying careers to avenge your wounded pride? Harlan met his gaze steadily. This isn't about pride, Dane. It's about accountability. You stole from children who had nothing. Used money meant for their education to renovate your kitchen. His voice remained level, but carried an undercurrent of steel. Did you think no one would notice? Or did you just believe no one like me would be in a position to do anything about it? The community center bustled with activity as volunteers put finishing touches on the Thanksgiving preparations. Long tables formed a U shape in the main room, covered with autumn-colored tablecloths and decorated with centerpieces made by students in the after-school art program. In the kitchen, the scent of roasting turkey mingled with pumpkin pie, cornbread stuffing, and all the traditional fixings. Harlan moved through the space with quiet authority, checking details, answering questions, ensuring everything was ready for the 50-plus guests expected student from the program. Volunteer tutors, supportive teachers, and families from the community who might otherwise spend the holiday alone. Dad! Axel appeared at his side, clipboard in hand. The seating chart is done, and Ms. Grimsley says the turkeys need 15 more minutes. At 12, Axel had grown taller over the past year, his confidence blossoming as he took on increasing responsibility in the program his father had built. Today he wore a button-down shirt and tie that matched Harlan's small detail that hadn't escaped notice. Thanks, buddy. Did you put the name cards out yet? Started to, but we're missing a few. Jerome's family confirmed they're coming, but we don't have cards for them. I'll take care of it. Harlan checked his watch. People will start arriving in about 30 minutes. Why don't you help Mr. Armand set up the chess tables for after dinner? Axel nodded and hurried off. Harlan watched him go, a familiar swell of pride rising in his chest. The boy had thrived this past year, excelling in school, winning regional chess tournaments, developing genuine friendships with several program participants. The shadows left by Vanessa's cruelty had largely faded, replaced by the confidence that came from being valued and respected. In the small office off the main room, Harlan found blank name cards and a marker. As he prepared the additional settings, Yvette appeared in the doorway. Everything's on schedule in the kitchen, she reported. The high school culinary students are doing an amazing job. Thanks for organizing that. Having them prepare the meal was inspired. Gives them practical experience and community service hours for their college applications, Yvette said with a shrug. Win-win. How many total confirmations do we have now? 58. Yvette consulted her tablet, including Dr. Reynolds and 3 school board members. Harlan nodded, unsurprised. In the years since his appointment as Director of Equity Initiatives, a seat at the table had grown from a grassroots program to a district-wide initiative, attracting attention from education officials across the state. What had begun as a response to cruelty had evolved into something far more significant, a model for institutional change. Yvette was silent for a moment, then added casually, Also, there's someone waiting to see you in the front lobby. Says she's family. Harlan looked up sharply. Vanessa. No, thank God. Says her name is Beatrice Cooper. Mentioned she was Rosalind's sister. The name hit Harlan like an electrical current. Rosalind's sister? That's impossible. Rosalind didn't have siblings. Well, this woman seems pretty convinced otherwise. Asked for you by name. Curious and wary, Harlan made his way to the lobby. Standing by the windows was a tall woman in her 60s with silver-streaked dark hair pulled into a neat bun. Something in her posture, straight-backed but relaxed, triggered a pang of recognition. Miss Cooper, he called. She turned, and Harlan felt the air leave his lungs. The resemblance wasn't obvious at first glance, but it was there in the shape of her eyes, the particular way her mouth curved when she smiled. Mr. Greaves. Harlan, thank you for seeing me. Her voice was lower than Rosalind's had been, but with the same measured cadence. I understand this is unexpected. To put it mildly, Harlan replied, studying her face. Rosalind never mentioned a sister. No, she wouldn't have. Beatrice's expression held sadness, but no surprise. We were estranged for many years before her death. Family disagreements that hardened into silence. My fault as much as anyone's. How did you find me? I've been following your work for some time now. She gestured to a newspaper clipping in her hand, a recent feature on the program's expansion. When Rosalind died, I hired a private investigator to locate her. By the time I found her, I was too late. But I found you and Axel instead. Harlan's protective instincts flared. And you've been what? Watching us from distance for 6 years? Why come forward now? I couldn't at first. Grief, guilt, cowardice, take your pick. Beatrice met his gaze directly. But I've been monitoring Axel's welfare from afar, making anonymous donations to his school. When I saw what happened with your second wife, I nearly intervened then. You knew about Vanessa? Harlan's suspicion deepened. How closely have you been watching us? Not in any invasive way, I assure you. I'm a retired school principal from New York. I have contacts in education circles. Word travels. She hesitated. I'm not here to disrupt your lives, Harlan. I'm here because I'm proud of what you've built, and because I have resources that could help take it further. Harlan's mind raced, processing this revelation. Part of him wanted to reject this sudden appearance of family from nowhere. Another part recognized the opportunity it presented not just for the program, but potentially for Axel, who had so few connections to his mother's side. Does Axel know you're here? No, I wouldn't approach him without your permission. Beatrice's expression softened. I'd like to meet him, if you're comfortable with that. But I understand if you need time. Before Harlan could respond, Axel's voice came from behind him. Dad, Miss Grimsley needs you in the kitchen. Harlan turned to see his son standing in the doorway, looking curiously at Beatrice. The boy froze, his gaze fixed on the older woman's face with an intensity that suggested he too had noticed the resemblance. Axel, Harlan said carefully, this is Ms. Cooper. She says she's your mother's sister. The boy's eyes widened. Mom had a sister? Beatrice smiled gently. Hello, Axel. Yes, though we weren't in contact when you were born. I wanted to meet you for a very long time. Axel looked to his father, silently asking for guidance. Harlan nodded slightly, giving permission for the conversation to continue. You look like her, Axel said softly. Around the eyes. So I've been told. Beatrice's voice caught slightly. You have her eyes too. An awkward silence fell, broken by the sound of the kitchen door swinging open as Yvette emerged, looking for Harlan. Sorry to interrupt, she called, but we need a decision on the seating arrangement for the board members. Harlan made a quick decision. Ms. Cooper, would you like to join us for Thanksgiving dinner? It's a community event, we have plenty of room. Surprise and pleasure crossed Beatrice's face. I'd be honored. Axel, can you add a place at our table? Ms. Cooper will be sitting with us. The boy nodded and hurried off, casting one more curious glance at his newfound aunt. Harlan turned to Beatrice. After dinner, we can talk more about your connection to Rosalind and your interest in the program. For now, let's just focus on the holiday. After dinner, as people mingled and moved to various activity stations set up around the center chess tables, art projects, conversation areas, Beatrice approached Harlan with a folder she'd retrieved from her car. I mentioned resources earlier, she said, opening the folder to reveal legal documents. My sister and I didn't speak for years, but when our parents died, they left everything to be split between us. I've never touched Rosalind's portion. It's been gathering interest, waiting for the right purpose. She handed him a document, a bank statement showing a substantial sum. Additionally, I recently received an inheritance from my late husband's family. Having no children of my own, I've been looking for a meaningful way to use it. Harlan studied the figures, stunned by the implications. This is substantial, enough to establish the Greaves Center for Learning Dignity, Beatrice said. A permanent home for your program, with staff, equipment, and scholarships for the students you're helping. Completely endowed, so it won't depend on yearly fundraising or district budget fluctuations. Harlan looked up from the papers, speechless. The amount would not only secure the program's future, but expand it beyond anything he'd imagined possible. Why? He finally asked. You don't know me. You've never met Axel until today. Beatrice's expression softened. I told you I've been watching. Not in a concerning way, she added quickly, seeing his expression. Through professional connections, community networks. I've attended 3 of Axel's chess tournaments, sitting quietly in the back. I've read every article about your program. I've spoken with educators who've worked with you. She sighed deeply. Rosalind and I had a falling out when she decided to become a teacher instead of joining the family business. Our parents were rigid about expectations. I sided with them, to my eternal regret. By the time I realized my mistake, pride kept me from reaching out. Then she met you, and I thought perhaps she'd found her path without needing me. Harlan remembered how little Rosalind had spoken of her family, how she'd always changed the subject when asked about her childhood. After she died, Beatrice continued, I tried to find you both, but you'd moved. When I finally located you, You were remarried. I didn't want to disrupt what seemed like a fresh start. And then, and then I heard about what happened last Thanksgiving. Her expression hardened. I was preparing to introduce myself when I saw you were handling it. More than handling it, you were transforming it into something remarkable. So you decided to watch a little longer, Harlan concluded. I decided to let you build what you needed to build, she corrected, and to be ready when the moment was right to help take it further. Across the room, Axel was teaching a younger child how to play chess, his face animated as he explained strategy. Seeing his son so confident, so engaged, Harlan felt a surge of gratitude for everything that had led to this moment, even the painful parts. The Greaves Center, he repeated, testing the name. Rosalind would have liked that. Yes, Beatrice agreed. She always believed education should be about dignity first. Knowledge follows naturally when people feel valued. Harlan extended his hand. Thank you. Not just for this, he gestured to the documents, but for being here today. For Axel, having a connection to his mother's family, that's beyond price. Beatrice took his hand, her grip firm and warm. I should be thanking you. You've given me a chance to make amends in some small way for the years I lost with my sister, and to be part of something that truly matters. The glass-fronted building on Main Street had once housed a struggling bookstore, its location just far enough from the town center to make it commercially challenging. Today, a new sign hung above the entrance, the Greaves Center for Learning Dignity, with the tagline, "Every child deserves a seat at the table." Inside, workers were putting final touches on the renovations, installing computer stations, arranging flexible seating areas, stocking bookshelves with educational resources. The space had been transformed into a warm, welcoming environment that would serve as the permanent home for the program Harlan had built from the ground up. The day of the Thanksgiving celebration arrived crisp and clear. The center was filled to capacity, with over 100 guests gathered for the community meal. Tables had been arranged in a giant U shape throughout the main space, allowing everyone to see and interact with each other. As dinner time approached, Axel called for everyone's attention, standing at the center of the U-shaped table arrangement. Thank you all for coming, he began, his voice clear and steady. Before we eat, I wanted to share something. Last Thanksgiving was difficult for my dad and me. We found ourselves without a place at the table. A hush fell over the room. Most people knew parts of the story, but few had heard Axel speak of it directly. That night, Dad told me that things would change, that we would build something new. At the time, I didn't really understand what he meant. Axel gestured to the space around them. This is what he meant. Not just a building or a program, but a community where everyone belongs, where no one gets fed from a dog bowl in the kitchen. A few gasps came from those who hadn't heard that particular detail. Harlan felt a momentary twinge, wondering if the memory still hurt his son. But Axel's expression showed no pain, only a calm certainty. Today, I'd like us all to remember that belonging isn't automatic. It takes work. It takes people who care enough to build the table, not just sit at it. With that, he picked up a serving bowl of mashed potatoes and began moving around the table, serving others before himself. Other young people from the program followed his lead, taking up serving dishes and attending to guests. Harlan stood to one side, watching as his son moved confidently among the gathered community. When Axel approached Beatrice with the potatoes, she placed a hand briefly over his, saying something that made him smile. The family resemblance between them was striking in that moment, not in physical features, but in the particular quality of warmth they both projected. After everyone had been served, Axel returned to his place beside Harlan. He tapped his water glass gently with a spoon, calling for attention once more. Last year, I had no seat, he said simply. Now, I help build the table. I hope everyone enjoys the meal and knows they will always have a place here. Applause rippled through the room, followed by the comfortable sounds of a community gathering conversation, laughter, the clinking of utensils against plates. Axel looked up at his father, seeking approval. Harlan, who so rarely displayed emotion openly, felt something shift inside him. The tight control he had maintained for so long through Rosalind's death, through the struggles with Vanessa, through the building of the program eased slightly, allowing a genuine smile to spread across his face. That it wasn't just pride he felt, though there was plenty of that. It was something rarer, peace. The knowledge that whatever happened from this point forward, they had already succeeded in the thing that mattered most. They had built something meaningful from pain. They had created space for others where once they had been excluded. "You did good, buddy," he said quietly to his son. "Real good." Around them, the community they had built continued to grow, one conversation, one connection, one shared meal at a time. At the far end of the table, the polished dog bowl sat filled with gourmet cookies, no longer a symbol of humiliation, but a reminder of how far they had come. How a single cruel act, intended to diminish, had instead sparked a movement based on dignity and inclusion that Harlan's smile deepened as he took in the scene. This was victory, not of revenge, but of transformation. Not just a seat at the table, but the building of a better table altogether.